Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 353. Badger basketball, once again, coming up short.
This is a world where nothing is solved.
Nope.
Well, someone once told me time is a flat circle.
Yep.
Everything we've ever done or will do, we're going to do over and over and over again.
Correct. It's a dark start to the podcast, I'll grant you that. It's a dark beginning to episode 352. But I'm always reminded of that True Detective Season 1 quote we just played from Matthew McConaughey. Time is a flat circle, and we are destined to live the same life over and over and over again. And it really feels that way as it relates to Badger basketball and March Madness over the last decade. So, didn't make the Sweet 16 as we predicted last Wednesday. Didn't even make it out of the first game. Upset again by the 12-seed High Point. The only 12-5 that went the 12's way. And then you look at all the Big Ten teams that have moved on. Outside of Wisconsin, outside of Ohio State, everybody had a big opening weekend. And once again, we're sitting at home and wondering what the hell happened in that game against High Point. We're going to break down the game, which I honestly don't even think was that bad of a game in and of itself, but it's the totality of the failings in March that is what got people really revved up, I think. So we're going to break down the game itself. We're going to talk about Greg Gard because it has to be talked about now. It's 10 years or almost 10 years since the Sweet 16 run. It's another instance of a double-digit seed taking down the Badgers. He is a great regular season coach. Sound like anybody else? He's a great regular season coach, but at this point, if all you care about is March success and making deep runs and getting to the Sweet 16, hell, getting to the round of 32, getting to the Sweet 16, getting to the Elite 8, getting back to the Final Four, it is undeniable at this point that in a crapshoot tournament, Greg Gard is having difficulty figuring that out over the last 10 years. We'll break all of that down. We're going to talk about Brewer baseball. We have opening day this week, baby. Baseball is back. There is a Bob Uecker documentary, apparently, that is going to be teased at the end of opening day if you're at American Family Field on Thursday. We'll discuss that a little bit. They made some roster moves yesterday, too. They are back in Milwaukee tonight for the first of two exhibition games against the Reds before opening day on Thursday. Final Arizona game was yesterday. We'll go over that. And I do want to talk some Bucks and Wes Edens, owner of the Bucks, co-owner of the Bucks. Finally, somebody came out and said something about what could happen this offseason with Giannis. Wes Edens had quotes in an article on The Athletic about Giannis, about what's coming up now as he enters the final year of his contract. We'll go over that, and we have to talk about some Badger women's hockey as well. 9-time now national champions. We are a hockey school. We're a hockey country and a hockey school. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. Hit time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez around third. A throw and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, it's complete interception. And there is your Super Bowl dagger.
Booker the drive, gets inside, leans in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Yeah, welcome in Monday morning. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe if you can. And if you want to shoot us an email, we're going to do a mailbag episode, I think, next week heading into Easter weekend. That feels like an appropriate time to do that, heading into the first weekend in April. I think next Friday we'll do a mailbag episode. But if you have any questions, comments, Greg Gard takes, Badger basketball takes, whatever, it is strangebrewpod@aol.com. strangebrewpod@aol.com. I've also got a couple of tournament takes just in general, and I think we hit on these maybe last year, but I want to reset them as well before we talk about March Madness. But welcome in on your Monday. We also missed last week as I was taking off Thursday, Friday for the NCAA tournament and losing all of my losing all my bets and my teasers and my parlays. My bracket's kind of hanging in there. We can talk about that as well. I always joke the Wednesday I leave for the NCAA tournament on the B93 morning show. On that Wednesday, I always say on the last break, well, if everything goes right, if all the teasers hit, if all the parlays hit, if the bracket is intact, maybe I won't talk to you guys on Monday, because I always sign off and I say I'll talk to you guys tomorrow, or talk to you guys Wednesday, or talk to you guys, have a great weekend, I'll talk to you Monday. I say if everything goes right, if it's a perfect storm, if we get on a heater, maybe I won't talk to you guys on Monday, and then every Monday after the first 4 days of the NCAA tournament, hey, everybody, welcome to your Monday morning. So it never works out that way. But we are back on kind of a regular schedule here this week, Mondays and Fridays for the next, I think, foreseeable future, for the next 2-3 months here, it would seem. But if you want to shoot us an email, strangebrewpod@aol.com. But we missed last week, Chuck Norris passed away, 86 years old. Chuck Norris, dead. Couldn't believe that when I got out of bed. I think that was Thursday morning last week, or Friday morning. I think it was Thursday morning. And he'll rise 2 days later. That was one of my favorite jokes that was making the rounds. He will rise in 2 days, just to beat Jesus' record of rising on 3 days. The Chuck Norris jokes, that's like an Internet 1.0 thing. My wife and I were just talking about that. Internet 1.0, somebody was circulating the old Boom Goes the Dynamite clip from YouTube. Poor Brian Collins, that student broadcaster who got stuck with a bad teleprompter and a bad script filling in for that newscast, that student newscast in 2005. That was March 22nd, 2005. I should get some of it up. I do feel bad now kind of making fun of him. He actually went on to become a newscaster at a Texas TV station, and I don't think he still does it anymore, but he actually did graduate, and he went on to work in TV media, in news and sports media. But that was making the rounds on Twitter because it had been 21 years, March 22nd, 2005. And boom goes the dynamite. And my wife and I were kind of chuckling about it and saying how much we miss Internet 1.0. Like, Internet 1.0 was Chuck Norris jokes. It was Boom Goes the Dynamite guy. It was Leroy Jenkins. It was, what was it, David Bit My Finger. It was all those great videos. It was a simpler time. But I think Chuck Norris jokes became a thing in Internet 1.0. Some of my favorites, when Chuck Norris was born, he drove his mom home from the hospital. I like that one. When Chuck Norris slices onions, the onions cry. It's all jokes like that. I was texting my buddies when that news came down on Thursday. I said, I think one of my favorites is Chuck Norris can divide by zero. I like that one. And then it also brings to my mind the Conan O'Brien, the Walker Texas Ranger lever. Now, if you're an old school Conan fan, if you are a fan of Conan from the late night show on NBC, which I think we've talked about before, that is probably the last talk show that I ever watched religiously. But when I go back to my time in Stevens Point, everybody watched Conan. Our entire dorm at 11:35 or whenever it started on NBC after the Leno Tonight Show was done, we all watched Conan. Everybody was appointment viewing. We all wanted to watch Conan. This was pre-TiVo days and pre-DVR days and pre-being able to watch the clips on YouTube the next day. We all got together like a communal event, and every room, it felt like, had Conan on at 11:35. You could hear the intro to the Conan late night show on NBC playing in every dorm room. If you just walk down the halls, you'd hear it in every room just about. But he had a bit that he did because Walker Texas Ranger, while it was an immensely profitable show for CBS, and the ratings were always good, and people loved that show, it was, I think even the people that love it would admit, it had a soap opera quality to it where it was kind of cheesy acting. The writing wasn't the best. So Conan always had, for about a year, he had what he called a Walker Texas Ranger lever that he had sitting next to his desk, and he would, from time to time, out of nowhere, he'd just pull it, and they'd play kind of a random, unintentionally funny Walker Texas Ranger clip. And at the culmination of this being a thing, he played this clip from Walker Texas Ranger that features Haley Joel Osment. I see dead people. I see dead people. Haley Joel Osment from The Sixth Sense. He must have been a fill-in actor or a one-off actor on a Walker Texas Ranger episode, and he has one of the unintentionally funniest lines. Here is...
Now, ladies and gentlemen, as some of you may know, we here at Late Night often like to show clips from Walker Texas Ranger. Well, folks, there is one clip from Walker Texas Ranger that we've been holding back on. In fact, this is true. We've been afraid to show it. But it's spring cleaning, and I want to test just how good a crowd this is. So here it is. The one Walker clip we've never shown. Once you see it, you'll understand why.
And how you doing, little partner?
Fine. And it's little visitor now. Atawoyoli's how you say it in Cherokee.
Oh, well, pardon my French, but I'll be damned.
Walker told me I have AIDS.
My God! What is the context on that? Conan just walks off into the sunset.
I think we should go to commercial.
That's such a good Conan. I loved that show, and he did it sometimes on the TBS show too. You know, he's got the backdrop of New York City right behind him, and it's just a curtain. It's just a kind of like a screen print on a curtain of the skyline of New York. I would love when something random like that would happen, and he'd get up and walk and stare off like it was an actual window, like he was staring off into the New York night. And that's what he did after that clip. But the Walker, Texas Ranger, if you're my age, if you're a dude in your late 30s, probably more early to mid 40s, I would guess at this point, or late 40s, and you watch that late night show with Conan over the years, you probably remember the Walker, Texas Ranger lever, and that was the coup de grace. That was the end of it, where they played that one clip, and it just makes me laugh. Conan's reaction to it makes me laugh every time. But yeah, Chuck Norris, 86 years old. Yeah, those Chuck Norris jokes. When the boogeyman goes to sleep at night, he checks his closet for Chuck Norris. Time waits for no man unless that man is Chuck Norris. There were so many of those in Internet 1.0. Yeah, we have to track down. Can I find the Boom Goes the Dynamite guy? Boom Goes the Dynamite. I felt so bad for this kid. It's so funny, but it's so rough to watch. So he was at Ball State University. That's where this happened. And the story goes, I think that he had to fill in on the TV, the student TV station. And we had one in Stevens Point. My wife had one at Oshkosh that she worked at. And he had to fill in doing a sportscast. And it goes so terribly. And he is so nervous the entire time. And I guess eventually it comes out that his teleprompter wasn't working. So if you've ever done anything in TV and you don't know what's happening, you can't see the clips that are playing, the words are all jumbled on your teleprompter, it's hard to ad-lib that in a tight window. Here is, let me just see if this will pull up without an ad here.
Hello, everyone. Well, the Ball State softball team continued to play this weekend, and they were hoping to continue off of their straight 3 out of 4 losses. And so we'll take a look and see how that happened.
Oh, no.
They started off good, but then eventually the Ball State women's team shut down and ended up doing poorly.
It started off good, and then it went poorly. That's not a bad recap.
Oh, no.
That is my favorite part of the clip, is when he realizes, this I think is the moment he realizes his teleprompter is not working and he is in for it, because this is the beginning of a 4-minute segment, and things go off the rails less than 15 seconds in. This oh no he gives is...
And poorly. Oh, no.
Oh, no. I am in big, big trouble. And then here was the iconic clip. They were playing a Pacers clip, and then boom goes the dynamite.
Later, he gets the rebound, passes it to the man, shoots it, and boom goes the dynamite.
Passes it to the man, and boom goes the dynamite. Well, apparently that happened yesterday in history in 2005, 21 years ago. Brian Collins, the boom goes the dynamite kid. But Internet 1.0 was such a simple time. Yeah, Chuck Norris. That was heavy news at the end of last week. We were off for that day. 86 years old, passing away. We think, or so we think. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk about where we want to start. We got to start with the Badgers, right, and the NCAA tournament. So just real quick, I thought we had some really good games on Sunday. Real quick, I've got 2 quick takes that I think that we have talked about before. Number 1, just talking about Sunday, yesterday's games. I don't know when it was decided. I have to go back and look at when all the broadcast times or the game times changed on Sunday. As I was texting with my buddies yesterday, so last night they had 2 games in the afternoon. Then last night, the Texas Tech-Alabama game, the final game of the weekend, 48 games in 4 days, 16 games on Thursday, 16 games on Friday, 8 games on Saturday, 8 games on Sunday. And I have no problem, even though Thursday's a work day, and, Friday is Friday, Saturday is Saturday. I have no problem with late-night games on Thursday. There's something about that Sunday night schedule. When we were kids, when I was a kid, I think it was every game on that final day of the opening weekend, so Sunday. I think every game was done, and my buddies were texting about this, before 60 minutes. So Saturday, the game started at 11 o'clock, then there's a 1 o'clock game, then there's games late afternoon, and they go all the way into the late hours of the night on Saturday. But that's Saturday. When I was a kid, I seem to remember games on Sunday would start at 10 or 11 o'clock, and then they'd basically just be all afternoon. Then you'd hit your late local news, then 60 minutes, then the tournament was done. Last night, that Texas Tech-Alabama game tipped off at 8:45 Central Time, and by the time they actually got to it, I think it was more around 9 o'clock Central Time. That is a 10 p.m. Eastern Time Zone tip time on a Sunday night. Now, look, I love basketball. I love college basketball. We went over on the Wednesday podcast last week. I take off the Thursday and Friday of the tournament every single year. It is my favorite 4 days in sports. I don't know when it was decided that Sunday was going to have the bulk of their games in the evening and into the late night hours. It makes no sense. Go back to the old schedule. This may be an old man yells at cloud segment. Go back to the old schedule where you're playing multiple games right away at 11 o'clock, and you have a couple of games in every window at 11, 1:30, and 4:30. Get all 8 games done. By the time you hit 6 or 7 o'clock Eastern time, you hit 60 minutes, and then you're into the weekend wind down where people are getting their Sunday scaries, and they're getting set for Monday. I don't know when they started doing that. It agitates me every year. An 8:45 Central Time tip time. Now, this is a degenerate perspective, but I don't even put those last 2 games. I wish I could sometimes, but I can't even put them in a teaser or a parlay. I am on record as saying I cannot gamble on a game that I have no ability to watch, or if I don't want to stay up late to watch a West Coast. Like, I never bet on West Coast NBA games. Even if there's a really savory bet, even if there's a big matzo ball on the West Coast slate or the West Coast baseball slate on a Wednesday night where I think it's a mortal lock that team is going to win, I am just not somebody, I'm not a gambler who can put money on a game that starts at 9 o'clock and then I go to sleep. I just can't do it. It's never been something I've been able to do. So even if there are 2 really tasty games late in the night on Sunday that I'd like to add to a teaser or a parlay, I don't, because I don't want to stay up till midnight to watch it. I'm not sure when that shift happened. I wish they would go back to the original, the late 90s, early 2000s, that schedule on Sunday where all of the games are in the afternoon. Early afternoon, late afternoon, or even early evening. Even if you had one tip off at 6 o'clock, 5:45, 6 o'clock, it's over by 8, 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock at the latest. But tipping a game off at 9:45 p.m. Eastern time on a Sunday night after we've all watched basketball for 4 days, just normalize that schedule. So that's one gripe I have just about the tournament scheduling. And the other gripe I have has nothing to do with the tournament, but my wife and I ran into this again. She had off on Thursday. It was her birthday. Happy birthday. And she is trending towards, by the way, that podcast we did at home on Monday with the really bad blizzard weather a week ago. It hasn't happened yet, but it is looking to me, on the analytics side of things, it is looking to me like the podcast that we had her on, her first ever podcast, where we recapped the Arizona spring training trip, and then she gave you some blow-by-blow on the Quinn Priester, the whatever it is, the wrist injury he had. And she gave you some detailed analysis on that as a physical therapist. That is trending towards likely being the biggest downloaded episode that we have had on Strange Brew. I think our number 1 episode, it's either the Dame Lillard, it's either the emergency pod we did when Dame Lillard was traded to the Bucks, or it was the episode the day after the Micah Parsons deal. I think the Micah Parsons trade happened on a Thursday, I'm pretty sure, so it kind of lined up right away with the Friday podcast. That is, I believe, our most downloaded episode in Strange Brew history, but she is pacing. I think she's already 2 or 3 overall, and I would think in all likelihood she is going to outpace that, and that will be the most downloaded episode in this podcast's history, in this podcast life. So that's not going to hurt her ego at all. That's not going to hurt her one bit. But her birthday was on Thursday, so she's a 4-on, 1-off schedule. She has off on Thursdays anyway, and she took off on Friday this year, and as I said, I always take off the Thursday, Friday of the tournament. So we had some time to go watch games. She loves watching the games. I bought her for her birthday a year or two ago a black crew neck t-shirt that in white text on the front says, "Make your free throws," which if you've ever met my wife, anytime we watch an NBA game, anytime we watch a college basketball game, nothing infuriates her more than when, especially at the NBA level, when these guys who make seven figures, who make all this money, can't make their free throws. So I forget if it was Barstool. I don't remember what company it was that put that sweatshirt out. But a few years ago, I saw an advertisement for just a basic black sweatshirt that said in white, "Make your free throws." That's all it is. And I think I paid probably $80 for this thing. It's just a basic crew neck sweatshirt. I saw that and said, I have her birthday gift this year. And she wears it the last 2 years. I think she wears it if we ever go to a bar to watch the Badger game for the tournament or whatever games we're watching. She always wears it, and everybody loves it. Everybody we run into, ooh, nice shirt, nice sweatshirt. Make your free throws. So we had some time last week. She had her birthday Thursday. We spent time with her family on Sunday. That was lovely, but she had her birthday Thursday. We went out to a nice dinner. We had curling that night. Then we went to a couple bars on Friday to watch some games. It always perplexes me. It confounds me how we can go to sports bars for NCAA tournament games. And there were some tweets about this, too, that I sent my buddies. One of them used an old Donald Trump meme to it that made me laugh. But it always confounds me when we go to a sports bar, especially at NCAA tournament time or on an NFL Sunday. You go to a sports bar during tournament games, and when you get there, the Golf Channel is on, NBA TV is on with some retro game from 1975. None of the TVs are on the NCAA tournament at a sports bar. Maybe one is on an NCAA tournament game. And we live in a world now, as I think we talked about either this year or last year, where you don't have just one game. We have the access to all the channels. Every game that is an NCAA tournament game is on TV if you have a cable subscription. I think if you still live in the over-the-air TV world, you only get the one game at a time because you don't have TNT, you don't have TBS, you don't have True TV. This is True TV's time to shine, right? This is their time. This is their 2-week stretch where all eyes are on True TV, and they play about 1 million Impractical Jokers promos throughout the entirety of all these games, trying to suck you into future True TV broadcasts. But we have access to all of that. Every place that has a cable subscription can have every game on. And this is the whole point. We want to watch all the games. And it never ceases to amaze me when you get to a sports bar and you ask them to turn the channel, or can you turn this game on? Could you turn this game on this TV? Could we turn Dr. Phil off on this TV and turn this game on? It never ceases to amaze me when bartenders look at you, when you ask them to change the channel, when you ask them to put a game on, they stare at you like you asked them to split the atom. They stare at you like you have 3 heads. Like I have asked them to do the most painful thing that anybody has ever asked them to do in their lives. And then it takes forever. Oh, I don't know how the remote, I got to find somebody who knows how the remote works. And then it takes 10, 15 minutes. Then you got to ask again, and you feel like you're pushing this on them. I don't understand how this happens. There has to be, especially at tournament time, I have thrown this idea out there. Especially at tournament time, I would argue at any time, but especially at tournament time or on an NFL Sunday, there should be, at a sports bar, there should be one person that you hire. And I know the economy's tough and food prices are high and it's not cheap to run a business and run a restaurant, run a bar. You should hire one person, and all they do, all that their responsibility is being in charge of all of the remote controls on all of the TVs, like He-Man, like Master of the Universe. I have the power. And that's all they do. And they keep an eye on all the games, and they're flipping the channels, and they're making sure they're well interspersed. Like the bar we went to on Friday has probably 20 TVs, and they're really well displayed at basically every angle of the bar. So you would think, all right, let's have a couple of games, game on a couple of these TVs, spaced out. So if you're sitting down, you could maybe watch a couple of games at the same time. But there should be one person at a sports bar on an NFL Sunday during March Madness, big sports days like that, where that's all they do. They have an intimate knowledge of how the remote control works, how it's hooked up to the various TVs. Because I kind of end up feeling like an asshole, too, because I know, as I'm asking the question, I know the last thing this bartender wants me to ask is to turn the channel or turn this game on or turn this game off, because for whatever reason, they don't know how to do that. How is that not a part of the training at a sports bar, day one, here's the remote, here's what this remote controls, here's what this remote controls, here's the channels we have access to. But there should be one person at that bar, then that's all they do. And then if that person is doing their job correctly, you probably don't have to ask anything of them. They're flipping to the right channels. They're making sure the games are live. The best games are on the best TVs with the best vantage points. That should be a niche job this time of year. Seasonal work. That should be seasonal work for the month of March all the way through the first week of April at a sports bar, where you pay someone and that's all they do. They don't get drinks, they don't buzz tables. All they are in charge of is the remote controls at the bar to make sure the best games are on and all the games are on. But that we ran into that again on Friday and Saturday, where we had to ask, could you put this game on? Could you put this game? Could you put the tournament on? It's the biggest thing going right now. Could you put the NCAA tournament on? Yes, I understand the 1991 Masters was very entertaining, but could we put a current game on TV? So just 2 tournament gripes before we talk about the Badgers. Now let's talk about the Badgers. So I went over this on the air on the B Morning Show, on the HBL Morning Show, and a couple of Green Bay Morning Shows this morning as well. And I want to talk about what happened on Thursday. And I want to talk about what happened in this way. I want to just talk about the game. And that's not going to take very long. I just want to talk about the Thursday game. And I don't want to talk about it in the lineage of all the disappointments we've had over the last decade and all the double-digit seeds that have taken down a higher-seeded Badger team since 16, 17. I just want to talk about Thursday's game, High Point, Wisconsin, Thursday afternoon. The purple team versus the red team in a vacuum, just that game. And then we can have the Greg Gard discussion. Because as bummed as I am about the way things went on Thursday in that High Point matchup, and as bummed as I am, as we talked about in the teaser, that all of these Big Ten teams have moved on with the exception of Wisconsin, Ohio State, and Big Ten looks like the conference right now. Iowa had the big upset of Florida. I mean, you've got all these teams that are moving forward. Michigan looks dominant. So it sucks to be the fan of the 1 or 2 teams in the Big Ten that could knock it out of the first round. It sucks to be the fan of the team that lost another 12-5 matchup, lost to another double-digit seed. As bummed as I am about all of that, I don't think that Thursday's game was necessarily a bad game, a poorly played game, or a poorly coached game. There are other games in the last decade that I believe you can say that about. But I don't know that you can say that about Thursday's game. It is the 5-12 matchup, as we talked about heading into Thursday on the Wednesday podcast. High Point had not really played anybody, but they had 30 wins. They scored 90 points a game. There were reasons to be concerned, even though when we looked at and we went over their schedule on Wednesday, they hadn't played anybody of relevance at all. I mean, and there wasn't a single team on their schedule and results that even sniffed the top 25, top 30, top 45, maybe even top 50. And as we said on the Wednesday podcast, if both of these teams play to their capabilities, to the fullest of their capabilities, I believe the Badgers should be able to win this game because they are the more talented team. And what happened on Thursday is the Badgers did that for 35 minutes. They did it for 35 minutes and 30 seconds. I mean, if you were an objective basketball fan watching that game on Thursday and you just tuned in, you didn't care about whether High Point moved on, whether the Badgers moved on, it didn't impact your bracket, you had no teasers or parlays going or straight up over-unders or whatever. If you just watched that game as a college basketball fan and you watched that game from beginning to end on Thursday, my feeling is you walk away from that game kind of like Maximus saying, are you not entertained? Each team made big shots. Each team protected the ball for the most part, with the exception of John Blackwell late. But even that didn't burn them. People are going to bring that play up in the last minute where Blackwell had the ball knocked out of his hands, and initially it was called Wisconsin ball. They went to review, and on review, it was off of Blackwell's hand. And yes, John Blackwell was lazy in that moment. Anybody that's anybody around basketball will tell you on an inbound like that, especially in a critical situation in a tournament game, when you have an inbound pass coming to you, you catch it strongly with both hands. And he tried to just lazily catch it with one hand, and it ends up being a turnover. But even that, the next High Point possession, they didn't score on. So it really didn't even burn them. But both teams made shots. Both teams protected the ball for the most part. It was back and forth, swings and momentum. If you were an objective basketball fan, it was an entertaining game to watch. And as a Badger fan, what was it? 5 minutes and 15 seconds left. The Badgers had a 70-62 lead. And they had the ball. And they were in the bonus. And at that juncture, I, like almost every Badger fan, I'm sure, thought, we're going to get this. This is where you want to be. 5 minutes left in the game. You've got an 8-point lead. You're a 9-point favorite. You've got an 8-point lead with 5 minutes left. You're in the bonus, and you have the basketball. And at that point, they did slow the game down. The pace of the game was pretty quick, which we expected it to be. As we said, High Point scores a lot of points. Badgers score a lot of points. As I was texting my buddies at the beginning of that game, as both teams were racing up and down the floor, if you would have teleported me from 1999, what was that game we talked about on the Wednesday podcast where they lost to the 12 seed Southwest Missouri State and the final score was 43-32? And it just made your eyes and ears bleed thinking about it, listening about it, or looking at it. If you would have teleported me from watching that game in 1999 to Thursday in 2026 and to see how much quicker Badger basketball was moving, I think I would have had an aneurysm. I would have had a stroke watching that. But if you watch that game, it was a fast-paced game all the way until that 5-minute mark. And at that point, the Badgers kind of took the air out of the ball. They slowed things down. And look, if you want to find fault with that, fine. But I've covered a lot of college basketball. I've talked to hundreds of college basketball coaches in my lifetime covering the sport, doing play-by-play. There isn't a college basketball coach in Division I, II, or III that would not have done what the Badgers did with 5 minutes to go. When you have an 8-point lead, when you feel like you're the superior team, and you have an 8-point lead, and you have the ball, and you're in the bonus, there is no purpose to sticking with what may have been a high or fast-paced game before that. You want to work the shot clock, you want to shorten the game, you want to limit possessions, and that's exactly what the Badgers started to do. Again, if you want to find fault with that because ultimately they lost, fine, that's your prerogative. But I don't think there's a coach, there's not a college or NBA coach even, or high school coach, or AAU coach, or intramurals coach. I don't think anybody would have played that any differently. They start to slow the game down, but at that point, I feel like you've got them. You've got them right where you want them. You have the ball, you're in the bonus, 5 minutes left, and you're up by 8. And then the Badgers couldn't score on that possession. And then it was the next possession for High Point where that Chase Johnston kid, that little white guy, number 99, who, by the way, is 26 years old. I didn't learn that until I watched the second-round High Point Arkansas game where they may have mentioned that on the broadcast. 26 years old. A lot of people go to college for 7 years. Yeah, they're called doctors. He has been, this is his 6th year of college basketball. This is his 3rd school. I do not know how you squeeze 6 years. I know everybody got the extra year because of COVID, and I think he was a freshman during COVID. But it looks to me, if you go through his year by year, I don't know how he would have redshirted a year because he played everywhere. And he played like 30-plus games a year every other year that he's been in college basketball. So I don't know how he squeezed a 6th year of eligibility out of that, but he did. He's 26 years old, and that was the play after the Badgers don't score, so it's under 5 minutes left at this point. That was the play where Chase Johnston, like Steph Curry, like we know that life too, Badger fans, we knew that from the Davidson matchup in whatever it was, 2007 or 2008, whatever year that was. He pulled up like Steph Curry, 3 feet inside the half-court line, from the logo, from 40 feet away, and he took a pull-up 3 and he drilled it. It's one of those high-risk, high-reward shots where if he misses that, if he misses a pull-up 40-footer from just inside the half-court line with 4:45 left in the game, where you're only down by 8, if he misses that shot and the Badgers get the rebound and they score and they go up by 10, the game is over. And if that's the way it plays out, people will look back at that Chase Johnston shot that he took, that he made. But if he misses and the Badgers score and they go on to win, everybody looks back at that shot and says, what a moron. You had 4 minutes and 45 seconds left. You were only down by 8. There was no reason to take that shot. And then, coincidentally, if you watch the end of their second-round match, which they did give Arkansas a good game in the second round, which I don't know that it made me feel better, but, I guess if you're a Badger fan, if Arkansas would have beaten High Point by 40 points in round 2, I think I feel slightly worse. I don't know that I feel better about the fact that that was kind of a close game, but it was kind of a close game. But late in that game, did you watch that game against Arkansas? Late in that game, Johnston took, I think, back-to-back threes that were kind of ill-advised, fall away, high degree of difficulty shots, and he's an excellent three-point shooter. He's better than 40% on the year. But he took a couple of shots late in that game when it was a one-possession game that he did not hit, and it cost them. And I heard people talking and read on Twitter, people saying, what is this guy doing? That's what he did against the Badgers, with the difference being he drilled that shot. And that got them to within 5. And to his credit, it did kind of feel like after that, High Point had the momentum. They had this belief that they were going to win because he hits that kind of shot, and the Badgers were reeling a bit. But I don't even have a problem from that point on. I don't even have a problem with the way the Badgers ran offense. I know some people on Badger Twitter did. The Badger Twitter pitchforks and blowtorches were out. They were out after that game. But the whole year, your whole year leading up to that game, you lived and died with John Blackwell and Nick Boyd, specifically Nick Boyd, one-on-one, driving to the hoop and getting to the rim and scoring at the rim or getting fouled and getting free throws. That's how you won 24 or whatever it is, 25 regular season games. That's how you won 14 Big Ten games. That's how you blew out Michigan State. That's how you beat Michigan on the road. That's how you beat Illinois twice. That's what you did all year. The difference was on Thursday, for whatever reason, Nick Boyd and John Blackwell were not finishing consistently in the last 5 minutes of the game at the rim. John Blackwell had a weird game. He had 20 points in the first half. He was on fire. He looked unstoppable. And then something changed. I don't know if they changed their defensive scheme or how they were defending him in the second half. He scored 2 points in the second half and just did not look confident. He was oozing confidence in that first half, talking trash, gesturing to the crowd, knocking down shots, and it was like a totally different guy in the second half. But that's what they lived and died with every year. So because the shots weren't going in, you're going to get a lot of people that say, could you pass the ball more? Could you rotate the ball more? And fine, if that's what you want to have happen or that's what you wanted to have happen on Thursday, fine. But I'm just telling you, that is how they operated all year. That's how they won big games all year. John Blackwell and Nick Boyd getting into the paint, scoring at the rim, or getting fouled and getting free throws. And it just didn't happen consistently enough in the final 5 minutes. So that's what I mean when I say, as bummed as I am about the result of Thursday, ultimately, it was a good game. Both teams made plays. High Point made a handful more down the stretch than the Badgers did, and they won by a point. I'm not sure I'm super upset just about the way that game played out. Now, I'm upset as a Badger fan because once again, you lose to a 12 seed. Once again, you lose to a double-digit seed. Once again, you can't get to the round of 32. And it's been a decade of that kind of disappointment. But let's just say none of that existed. Let's just say the Badgers went to the Sweet 16 in each of the last 2 years. If that were the case and Thursday plays out the way Thursday does, I don't know how overwhelmingly upset the Badger fan base is. Certainly nobody's happy with losing, but you know what I mean? If they had been to the Elite 8 5 years ago, if they had been to the Sweet 16 last year, if you had had that kind of tournament success heading into Thursday, I would venture a guess that most Badger fans would have walked away from Thursday saying, you know what, it sucks we lost, but it was a handful of plays, High Point played their asses off, and you lost by a point. I'm not sure how much sleep people are losing if you have more tournament success prior to Thursday. The problem for the Badger program and for Greg Gard is what has happened in the past 10 years. And we detailed it on the podcast on Wednesday. That 12-5 matchup has not been kind to them. In fact, we detailed their problems in the tournament, and I even missed one. I missed the 2019 year where they got blown out by the 12-seed Oregon by 18 points. So as we went over on Wednesday, last year you beat number 14 Montana, you lost to number 6 BYU. The year before that, you got blown out by number 12 James Madison. The year before that, you lost to number 11 Iowa State. In 2019, you got blown out by number 12 Oregon. Then you had the back-to-back Final Fours in there and the back-to-back Sweet 16s. Prior to that, in 2013, you lost to number 12 Ole Miss. You lost to number 12 Cornell in 2010. You lost to number 10 Davidson. That was 2008. You lost to number 12 Southwest Missouri State. That was 1999. But just looking at that last 10 years, the James Madison loss, the Iowa State loss. Now, Iowa State now is a very good program. At that time in 2022, they were an 11 seed. You lose that one. You lose to number 12 Oregon. And, yeah, you haven't been to the Sweet 16 since 2017. So that brings us to Greg Gard. What do you want to have happen? What do you want? It's like the Notebook. What do you want? What do you want to do with Greg Gard? I feel like the Greg Gard conversation is basically the Matt LaFleur conversation. We could probably find, whenever the podcast was, where the Packers season ended this year, and probably when the Packers season ended last year in Philadelphia, we could probably just rehash the entire thing and just do where I could voice over Greg Gard instead of saying Matt LaFleur, just say Greg Gard instead of Matt LaFleur, because it is kind of the same conversation, isn't it? Greg Gard has a ton of regular season success. They win 20-plus games every year. They win double-digit Big Ten games every year. Anytime they're picked to finish in the middle of the pack or on the back end of the Big Ten, they find a way to finish in the top 4, 5, or 6. So he is undeniably, he is a good coach, a good regular season coach. The problem now is that they just haven't had that postseason success, a lot like Matt LaFleur. I did see somebody tweet, it did make me laugh. I forget what Badger game it was, but Matt LaFleur was at the game not long ago. I think it was in the middle or the end of February. And Matt LaFleur was at the game, sitting in the front row at the Kohl Center, and the Badgers won. Maybe it was the Michigan State game. And the Badgers won, and then Gard had LaFleur come into the locker room at the end of the game, and he gave the most uninspiring speech of all time, the most wet noodle speech of all time, clearly unprepared, clearly uncomfortable. And that sort of made the rounds, too. But somebody put a picture up of that night, Greg Gard standing with Matt LaFleur, and it said something to the effect of, this is where the die was cast. This is where the future March failings were cast. As soon as Matt LaFleur got his great eyebrows, his perfect eyebrows, and his fingerprints all over this Badger team, that's where it was decided in the sports world that this team was probably going to have a disappointing playoff run, because that's what the Packers have kind of dealt with. It is a very similar conversation. Matt LaFleur wins a ton of regular season games, hasn't had the postseason success. Greg Gard wins a ton of regular season games, hasn't had the postseason success. Now, I would argue March Madness is much more of a crapshoot, even though both of them are one-offs, even though both are one-and-dones. I feel like March Madness is much more of a crapshoot than the NFL playoffs are, but it is almost identical, and now you end up with Badger Twitter like it did on Thursday. I know where Badger Twitter lays. I know where they lie. They want Greg Gard gone. They want to try their luck with somebody else. I'm not sure I'm there. Greg Gard, he just gives you every year, you know what you're going to get. And as we've gone over with Greg Gard, I think he has done a tremendous job, a much better job than I ever expected from Greg Gard, of adapting to the NIL transfer portal era. When that all started happening 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of thought the game was going to pass Greg Gard by, because he's an old school guy. He's a Dick Bennett disciple. He's a Bo Ryan disciple. He's a guy who wants to find the hidden gems, the diamonds in the rough, and build them and cultivate them like Frank Kaminsky. Nobody wanted Frank Kaminsky. He was this tall, gangly, awkward-looking freshman, barely got playing time, got a little more playing time sophomore year, and we kind of thought, oh, maybe he'll be okay. And then he went crazy his junior year, and we thought, whoa, okay, he might be like an all-conference player. And then he wins the National Player of the Year his senior year. That's what those guys love to do. They want to find somebody in a freshman season in high school somewhere that nobody's got their eyes on. They bring him in, they cultivate him, he grows, he gets better year by year by year, and eventually he's a key player in his junior or senior year. That's how those guys like to do business. So when we got to the more above board kind of NIL transfer portal era, where any player can leave twice a year, now once a year, and the money is kind of more above board, I didn't think he'd have any success, but he has been able to do it. He has been able to find a good blend of still getting the guys and building them in the program. Like John Blackwell's in his third year. Nolan Winter's in his third year. He's got guys like that. Janicki's in his second or third year. He's got guys that have been with the program for a while that year to year to year have gotten better. And then he's been able to supplement that with John Tonje averaging 20 points per game as a fifth-year transfer last year. Nick Boyd averaging 20 points per game as a fifth-year transfer this year. So he has found a pretty good middle ground in the NIL transfer portal era of still building the way that he would prefer to build, the way that Shaka Smart would prefer to build, which he has stuck exclusively to trying to build that way, and that did not work this year in a 10 or 11 win year. But Gard has been able to find a middle ground between doing the things that he remembers doing coming up in college basketball and adapting to this mercenary transfer portal NIL era and bringing in the correct guys for the program. Like Nick Boyd and John Tonje in back-to-back years undeniably worked out well in this system, in this new up-tempo Badger offense. So he has done a lot better with that than I thought he would. And you just know what you're going to get every year. He's going to win 20 to 24, 25 regular season games. He's going to win 11, 12, 13. In this case, this year, 14 Big Ten games. I think last year, 15 Big Ten games. He's going to surprise a lot of people. Every year this team is going to be picked to finish middle of the pack. Every year they finish in the top half. They win Big Ten tournament games. They get marquee wins in conference like we just talked about. Michigan State, Illinois, Michigan, those kind of teams. And he does that year in, year out. I don't know how you find someone. You know what I mean? You've got to find someone if you're going to go away from Gard, if you're going to have a changing of the guard, if you're going to go away from Gard, waka, and go to somebody else. And you're going to bring in, I know I saw a lot of people on Twitter talking about Tony Bennett. I don't know how much Tony Bennett even wants to coach college basketball anymore. He's another old school guy. Clearly, his dad, Dick Bennett, he is a disciple of that kind of program building. And he had such a great run at Virginia. They had that super disappointing year where they lost to number 16 UMBC. The next year they won the national title. And then it was middling after that. And it just kind of felt like Tony Bennett, like some college coaches, the way Nick Saban sort of went at Alabama. Obviously different resumes there, but Nick Saban has talked about how he just didn't like the direction this was going with NIL and transfer portal. And he didn't want to deal with it anymore. I feel as though Tony Bennett kind of fits in that range, but Tony Bennett would be a guy, obviously, who had great success in the state of Wisconsin at UWGB. He's got the roots to Dick Bennett. Is that someone you would get? But if you get somebody, if you were to move on from Gard and you get somebody, are they going to be able to keep you as a program that's winning 23, 24, 25 regular season games? And then on top of that, they have the March success. I just don't know how you find that. I don't know how you predict that. So that's the question. If they were to move on from Gard, which, by the way, they're not. This is all hypothetical. Greg Gard is going to be the head coach next year. He's probably going to be the head coach the next 2, 3, maybe even 4 years. He's not going anywhere. But for Badger fans, if you want to have that discussion, if you want to entertain the idea of moving in a different direction, how do you find someone that's going to be so good with the resources Gard has? He's going to be so good consistently year in, year out in the regular season in the Big Ten Conference. And then how do you predict that that guy is going to be any better in a crapshoot March Madness tournament? It's hard to figure out what guy you would get there. And then the other side of that coin, let's say you do move on from Greg Gard. Let's say Chris McIntosh hears the fans, and he says, okay, fans are upset. We're not getting the March success. We haven't been in the Sweet 16 in 10 years. Yes, we've had a lot of great regular season success, but all that matters is March. Greg, we're moving on. We're going to find somebody else. And he finds somebody else. He finds a rising mid-major coach or a younger coach with a different perspective or whatever. Then as soon as that new coach comes in the transfer portal era, I would think almost every Greg Gard guy is going to want out. So you're starting from scratch then. This isn't like back in the day where you had to have a year waiting period if a new coach came in, you didn't want to play for him. But the deterrent to leaving was the fact that you had to sit out for a year before you played anywhere else. Now, if you were to fire Gard, move on from Gard, bring in a new coach, I would think the retention rate is not going to be high on the current roster. So you're starting from scratch. Now, the other side of that is, in the transfer portal era, you would think or hope quickly that guy could establish his culture and find the guys he wants and get them to transfer in to build his program. But what happens if you move on from Greg Gard, you bring in the next hot mid-major coach, or you bring in a Tony Bennett or whatever, and what happens if they win 16 games next year? You know what I mean? I mean, you thought the grass was greener, and we thought we were going to get that next guy to take us to higher success in March. What if the program steps backwards? And then it doesn't take long in this climate where if you have a 15-win year and then you have another 15-win year and then all of a sudden the notoriety of the program goes down and guys don't want to be here, then what happens? Then you got to fire that guy. Then you got to bring in another guy. And then 5 or 6 years down the road, we're all saying, God, remember when Greg Gard was winning 25 regular season games and 14 Big Ten games or 15 Big Ten games every year? That was kind of nice, wasn't it? So that's the other side of, if you were to move on from Gard, there's no guarantee that the next guy is going to come in and be as consistently good as he is in the regular season and in the Big Ten Conference schedule. My feeling where I'm at, and you can feel however you want, as we said in the teaser or 10 minutes ago, it is undeniable that there have been March letdowns for 10 years now. So if you are somebody that says, that's all that matters to me, I want Greg Gard gone, I want to move on from him and try something else, fine. It's hard to argue with it, but I am still of the opinion that this is an incredibly hard tournament to predict. You never know where you're going to end up or what team, what 30-win mid-major purple jersey team you're going to play. I just feel like I stick with the guy who gets me to the tournament every year, has me as a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seed somewhere in there, wins 20 to 25 regular season games, wins 12 to 14 or 15 Big Ten games. And I guess a lot like Matt LaFleur, my hope is that at some point things are going to break. The matchups will be better. You'll make a play here or there better than you did on Thursday against High Point, and you'll move on. And I just stick with the guy who gets me to the dance every year. But it is hard as a Badger fan. If you are somebody on the other side saying, we need somebody that can bring us better March success, it's hard to debate that because it has been consistently now for the better part or close to a decade it has been a lot of letdown as we flip the calendar to March and you get into March Madness. So another rough one on Thursday for the Badger fans as they fell 83-82 at the hands of High Point. And then, High Point played a pretty good game against Arkansas before they lost. Now, one example that maybe somebody who does not want Greg Gard to continue would say, hey, look at what this team did, is Iowa. Brian Balaga, Iowa, the fighting Brian Balagas. So Iowa had Fran McCaffrey, who was there for forever, who was one of the all-time mean-mugging head coaches. I know not everybody loved Fran McCaffrey. I always thought he was entertaining. But Fran McCaffrey was at Iowa for many years. Better than a decade, right? And every year, Iowa, like the Badgers, would win 20 regular season games, 12, 13, 14 Big Ten games. They'd be in the tournament every year. And every year, they were either out in the first round or the second round. So Iowa moved on. They moved on from Fran McCaffrey, who then coached at Penn and led them to the tournament this year, and they lost in the first round in a 14-3 matchup? So they move on. They walk away from a long time. How many years was he there? Fran McCaffrey, wiki. I don't think he was there as long as Gard. Well, I guess as a head coach, though. Where is the coaching record for old Fran? Fran McCaffrey. Oh, yeah, he was at Iowa for a long time. So he was at Iowa from 2010 all the way through last year. And he had a career record of 297 and 207, so just about a 600 winning percentage. Gard has about a 640 winning percentage. But when you look at his time at Iowa, he won 11 games in year one. Then he won 18. Then he won 25. Then 20, 22, 22, 19, 23, 20, 22, 26. And every year they were in the tournament, and every year they were out in the first or second round. And then last year they had a 500 year, and then he was gone. Now, maybe if that happens for Greg Gard, is McCaffrey still there if they win 24 games last year? Instead of finishing 500 last year and being 7-13 in the Big Ten, if he wins 22 games and they're an 8 seed and they lose in the tournament, is he still there this year? Maybe. And maybe that would be the tipping point for Greg Gard. If Greg Gard comes out next year and they go 17-17 and they're out of the tournament, then maybe you do move on. But Iowa walked away from a similar situation where there was a guy consistently winning 20-plus games, consistently getting into the tournament, but not having March success. And they walked away. They walked away from McCaffrey. They bring in Ben McCollum. And in his first year, they're a 9 seed. They win in the first round, and then they upset number 1 Florida yesterday, the defending champions, and they're on to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1999. So for the Badger fans that maybe would like to be done with Greg Gard, that is an example of a team, a program that walked away, that cut bait on a guy who had done a lot of winning at a program. They go to a new guy, and in the first year, the new guy has them in the Sweet 16 for the first time in 27 years. But that was a big one yesterday. Iowa got a win against the defending champion Florida Gators. In terms of my bracket, I'm hanging in there. One of my Final Four teams was Florida, like a lot of people, so they're gone. I have 3 of my Final Four still hanging around. I've got Purdue and Michigan. Purdue beat Miami yesterday. Michigan has been rolling. And I've got my champion, St. John's, is still in the running, and I have 128 people in the bracket challenge. Remember we talked about on Wednesday the 2 different strategies you can have where if you're going to pick the team or a team that a lot of people are going to pick to win it all, then you've got to win the tournament. You've got to win your challenge in the early games. But if you have somebody that nobody has, if that team actually wins it, you're probably going to win some money in that bracket challenge. I am the only person in this 127, 128 person pool. I am the only one with St. John's as my champion, and they got by the skin of their teeth on Sunday. They had a 14-point lead. They blew it, and then it was tied in the final seconds, and they got a walk-off winner as time expired to beat Kansas. So now St. John's gets Duke. Now you've got the big matchup, St. John's and Duke in the Sweet 16 on Friday. It will be not hard for me to root against Duke. That's going to be very easy. Maybe one of the reasons I took St. John's is I like their makeup, I like Pitino, but as I was filling out my bracket and I saw that Duke was on that run, if they were to make the run, they'd have to beat Duke. I like that. That almost happened on Thursday, too. I was texting with my buddies. That was, as soon as the Badger game ended, I flipped on the Siena-Duke matchup, the 16-1 matchup, and Siena had the lead for, 85% of that game? And then eventually they ran out of gas. They never put a sub in into the final 10 seconds. They ran out of gas. Duke got in front and they won. But I was thinking, you know what would make me really happy? You know what would really cleanse my palate from another disappointing Badger March game? Would be if I got to watch number 1 seed Duke lose to a 16 seed right after that. That would be just the perfect palate cleanser. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But St. John's did move on. Now they take on Duke in the Sweet 16. But there were a lot of good games, not a ton of upsets. I don't want to delve into this yet. I think we talked about this last year coming out of the tournament. So in the last 2 years, there have not been a ton of upsets, although Iowa over Florida was a big upset yesterday, a 9-1. But in the early rounds, there aren't as many big seed upsets. And the thinking is that now that we're in the NIL transfer portal era, that as soon as another player, like a big school, as soon as they identify a star, a rising star in a mid-major, because that player can leave that school like that, and a team like Duke or Florida or Arizona, they've got buckets of money they can throw at them. So instead of that player who was kind of lost in the recruiting shuffle, instead of that player developing and spending 3 or 4 years at a mid-major, now those big programs, if they find those guys, oh, look at what's happening at Siena, look at what's happening at Utah State. They can get those players and get them to transfer quickly. The thinking is that we haven't seen a lot of upsets in the last 2 years because of NIL transfer portal. As I said last year when we maybe broached this topic, I still need more years. I need more data before you definitively say that. But I would say it's kind of trending in that direction, where we're seeing fewer and fewer double-digit seed upsets because of NIL transfer portal. But it's just not enough data. It's not enough years yet, I don't think, to say definitively one way or the other. But that Iowa-Florida matchup, that was a big upset yesterday. The 9-1, and the defending champions are gone. Yeah, riding with St. John's. St. John's, Purdue, Michigan, all still alive for me. I still have a puncher's chance in my bracket challenge. Overall, though, a very entertaining, as always, entertaining 4 days. One last thing I want to play you, and I'm not by any means am I rooting for Nebraska to win games. But this did kind of strike a chord with me as a broadcaster, as a play-by-play guy. So the Nebraska radio play-by-play announcer, his name is Kent Pavelka, and he is their Matt LePay. And I don't think he's nearly as good as LePay, but obviously we have our biases there. He had been doing Nebraska basketball play-by-play for 41 years. 41 years he had been doing Nebraska play-by-play, and they finally won their first NCAA tournament game, and then they won another one after that. And I think, in fact, it's going to be Iowa and Nebraska in the Sweet 16, just like we all thought. But this is kind of the end of the Nebraska-Vanderbilt matchup for the right to go to the Sweet 16, and Ken Pavelka's on the call. And as a fellow just media person, knowing what he probably had to watch for 41 years, every college basketball season with that program, to finally see a team succeeding at this level, it did.
Puts it up, missed it, put back up and in by Mass. You got a tie game at 72, 39.4 seconds left to go in Oklahoma City. A trip to the Sweet 16 in Houston, Texas on the line here. 33-32 with the ball. Cherokee swings it right side in the midcourt. 18 on the shot clock. Tanner's got it against Hoiberg. 72 apiece. It is 23 seconds, 22. Tanner right side, they hedge him. He drives Hoiberg. He nearly fell down. He's on the dribble. Baseline, no shot for him. Gives it over to Nickel. 4 on the shot clock. In the paint, shot on the way, no good. Rebound Nebraska. Huskers have it, 9 seconds left to go. Well, across the timeline to Price to Traeger. Layup. Yes! Yes! It's good. 2.2. It's good. Long shot, no good. With 2.2 to go.
He's got quite a growl to him, doesn't he? But I felt good. I saw a tweet after they won that first game. That was against the Vanderbilt. That was the second round matchup. But I saw a tweet, too, after that first win, and I couldn't help but feel good for this guy who's been watching pretty much terrible basketball for the better part of 4 decades. And then when you're linked to a program like that and you're a heritage voice and you know everybody in the school and all the fans know you, to finally see the success in the tournament and to call an NCAA tournament game and see the team win one, that I had to feel good for Kent Pavelka. 41 years as the voice of Cornhusker basketball, and they finally win a couple of NCAA tournament games. A fun 4 days, no doubt. Yeah, he's got a real old-school growl to him. I kind of like it. Matt LePay he's a pro's pro. LePay is just polished. And I love, as we've talked about often, I think he's the man. I mean, if I had to pick one guy, one broadcaster to call all the games for me for the rest of my life, LePay's my guy. But Pavelka's got a little more of that growl, that old-school growl to him a little bit. All right, now let's talk. I know we've already run long here. Let's talk real quick about the NBA and the Bucks and Wes Edens, and then we'll just touch on some Brewer stuff and get set for opening day on Thursday. So the Bucks actually won a game on Sunday. They started their 4-game West Coast trip in Utah last Thursday. They got blown out by a Jazz team playing backup players, a tanking Jazz team. I still laugh at the Utah Jazz name. That is one. How did they not reorganize that? When New Orleans came back into the league, there should have been something. I don't know what you would have called Utah at that point. Something Mormon, something milk. I don't know what you would have called them. But when New Orleans came back as an NBA franchise, I have no idea how smarter people didn't just say, you know what, I know the Jazz have been in Utah now for like 30 years. Let's give the Jazz name back to New Orleans where it belongs. But Utah is tanking this year. They are trying for a number 1 overall pick, a top 2, top 3 pick. So not only did you lose to a tanking team, you lost to a tanking team playing their backups. Now, no Giannis on Thursday, last week Thursday. I don't think they had Miles Turner, no Kevin Porter Jr., but still, a disgusting effort and a loss on Thursday. But then, on Sunday, as the Jekyll and Hyde season continues, they take on a Suns team Sunday night that going into Sunday was 39-31, 8 games over 500, a playoff team in the Western Conference, and the Bucks won. And they had no Giannis, no Miles Turner, no Kevin Porter Jr. Ryan Rollins was good. Ousmane Dieng. I am starting to believe in Ousmane Dieng. Well, I think I already did believe in him, but I'm starting to believe that he could be something bigger down the road. I don't know. We can go over this at the end of the Bucks season when whatever the final record is what it is, and they're not going to make the play-in tournament, and they're not going to make the playoffs, and it's going to be another offseason of, are they going to trade Giannis? Are they not going to trade Giannis? Is he going to sign the contract? We're going to get all that all over again. But when we look back at how this year ended, I think the two things I'm feeling pretty good about that are going to be pieces moving forward, whether we're in a world with Giannis or without Giannis, I still like the way Ryan Rollins has looked more often than not, and he seems to be getting more and more confident. He was good at the beginning of the year, then he had a lull. Remember we talked about a guy getting significant playing time for the first time in his career, and now teams have tape on him, and they're defending him differently. Now, how does he adapt to that? And it kind of seems like now he has adapted to that, and he's getting better and better and better. I feel like he's a piece moving forward, and I am feeling more and more confident that Ousmane Dieng is a piece going forward. Not only did he hit some big shots in that game Sunday night, he was an excellent defender. They had Ousmane Dieng on Devin Booker Sunday night, one of the top 10, 15 players in the league. They had Dieng using his length defending him, and he was frustrating Devin Booker. Those two guys. I don't know if you keep Kevin Porter Jr. I would think maybe he's number 3 on that list. Everything else you could fire into the sun as far as I'm concerned. But those two guys, Ryan Rollins and Ousmane Dieng, I feel pretty good about. So they actually beat a good Suns team on the road on Sunday. And now tonight they're in LA taking on the Clippers. But again, they're 5 or 6 games or 7 games back in the play-in tournament. Mathematically, they're still alive, but they're not going to do anything. They're 29-41. They're in LA tonight. The bigger story over the weekend was Wes Edens. It was Wes Edens and Mark Lazary that bought the team from Herb Cole. And then a few years ago, Mark Lazary sold his share, and that's where Jimmy Haslam got in the mix, and nothing has been good since Jimmy Haslam came on. And I know we've mentioned this before, but when they brought in Jimmy Haslam, everything was great. Giannis in the prime of his career, Middleton still here, Drew Holiday winning almost 60 games a year. And I remember when they said that Jimmy Haslam bought that share, the Cleveland Browns owner, and we all know how bad that franchise has been, arguably one of the worst franchises in professional sports. So when they brought Jimmy Haslam in, I thought, I don't like that, but I'm not going to worry about it right now because everything is good and everything's rolling and we just won a title and I'm not going to worry about that. Well, as things have fallen apart, it's probably time or beyond time to start worrying about the Jimmy Haslam impact. But Wes Edens, along with Lazary, they originally bought the franchise from Herb Cole, and now it is Wes Edens and Jimmy Haslam that are the two primary owners. Well, Wes Edens was doing an interview with The Athletic, and he talked about Giannis and the offseason. And while I don't think this is earth-shattering news, it is the first time one of the owners has said specifically that a trade could be on the table this offseason. Every other trade rumor we've heard has come from Shams, has come from Windy, has come from ESPN. Maybe there's something from Giannis's camp. I really don't think so. But most of that is kind of manufactured media stuff. But this is the first time that somebody with the Bucks has said, look, we're heading into the offseason. It's been a disappointing year. And Edens basically said, I think I've got the tweet right here. Edens said that this is going to be a situation. Here's the quote. Quote, Giannis is going into the last year of his contract, so one of two things will happen. Either he will be extended or he'll be traded. The likelihood you'll just let him just kind of play out that last year, we can't afford that. It's not consistent with what's good for the organization. That's not a Giannis issue. That's any player in the last year of their deal. So is that earth-shattering news that if Giannis does not want to sign the Supermax in October, that as an organization, the Bucks then probably have to trade him and get something back for him so that you're not totally left holding the bag where he would play the last year of his contract and then leave and you'd get nothing for him. That is not earth-shattering news. That is exactly what has to happen. If Giannis doesn't sign the contract in October, and I would think they're going to need Giannis to commit to that earlier than that, I would guess Giannis is going to want to see what they do with this draft pick, whether they draft somebody in the top 10, whether they trade that pick and bring somebody else in. He's probably going to want to see what happens with that. But then shortly after whatever they do in the draft, they're going to need, I would think, a commitment from Giannis one way or the other well before that October deadline to sign the Supermax. Because if you wait all the way to October and the season's set to start, and then he decides, oh, I'm not going to sign this contract right now, well, then you're kind of in a tough spot. If he's not going to sign the Supermax, you want to know that early in the summer, so then you have all summer to figure out what you want to do. I don't think, again, this is breaking news, that that's what the Bucks have to do as an organization, but it is the first time somebody of stature in the organization, Wes Edens, whether it's Edens or Haslam or John Horst, nobody has come out and said that until now. So that was news over the weekend, that Wes Edens basically said, look, if he's not going to sign the Supermax in October and stay here and sign the 4-year extension, and it's 4 years, $275 million. I know we kind of dove into this topic a podcast or two ago. I feel like he's going to sign it, not only because he has some loyalty, obviously, but I just don't know. Is he ever going to get a contract offer like that again? He's going to be 32 in December. And the injuries are piling up now. We've had multiple calf injuries, a groin injury, a hyperextended knee, still going back to the knee injury from 21. He's nearing the end of, I would say, his physical prime, given the way that he plays and how hard he plays. Is there any other team in the league that is going to offer him 4 years, $275? I think the Bucks are pretty much it. So he may sign that contract extension just because this may be my last chance to cash in with that kind of a contract. But that is the first time anybody from the ownership group has come out and specifically said, if he doesn't put his Herbie Hancock on that contract, if he doesn't sign that contract, then we're going to have to trade him before his final year is done. So that was news. The Bucks are in L.A. tonight taking on the Clippers. Let's talk about the Brewers real quick, and then we'll wrap up on some national championship hockey conversation. Brewers are getting set for opening day. They got smoked by the Cubs yesterday, 12-0 in their final game in Arizona. Chad Patrick, not great. Not great. Gave up 7 runs yesterday. Chad Patrick, who, as we went over, was a savior for the rotation with all the injury issues they had at the beginning of last year. He came out of nowhere and was excellent. And then he was a dog, as McAfee would say, a dog. He was a dog out of the bullpen in the playoffs against the Cubs on a couple of occasions. And very early in spring training, one of the few things Pat Murphy would commit to as it related to the starting rotation is that Chad Patrick is going to be a starter in the rotation this year. Now, spring training numbers, you can go one way or the other. They were not good for Chad Patrick. ERA over 11. My ERA goes to 11. Not good. Very funny in a fake documentary. Not good when we're talking about ERAs for your starting pitchers. So that was not inspiring. They are Cactus League numbers. Maybe he was working on some stuff. Maybe he was getting his mechanics tightened up. There's a lot of things that could be going on there, but that is not something I would say is, like we said, inspiring heading into the regular season. But they lose that game. Now they've got a couple of exhibitions against the Reds at American Family Field tonight and tomorrow. Tonight at 6:40, then tomorrow afternoon, then a day off Wednesday. I think it's the Yankees. Of course it is. The New York Yankees, Jerry. I think it's the Yankees and who that open up the regular season on Wednesday. There's one game on Wednesday as the opener. They're not opening in Japan like they did last year. It is the Yankees and Giants, and it's on Netflix, exclusively on Netflix, on Wednesday at 7:05. And then the Brewers open the regular season up on Thursday, 1:10, the White Sox at American Family Field. We know now Jacob Misiorowski is going to be the opening day starter. That made total sense, and it's going to be a former Brewer who is going to be going for the White Sox, Shane Smith. The White Sox plucked Shane Smith off of the Brewers roster, off of a minor league roster in a Rule 5 draft a year ago, and he had a really good year for a terrible team last year. He was an all-star, Shane Smith. He was 7-8 and a 3.8 ERA in his rookie year for the White Sox last year. So I think Shane Smith and Mizorowski, they came up together and they're buddies. They talked to Mizorowski about that this week, about cool that is to get the opening day start, but then to be going against one of his buddies coming up in the Brewers system. So that is on Thursday. But yeah, a couple of exhibition matchups tonight one tonight against the Reds and then one tomorrow afternoon against the Reds to get a couple of reps in at American Family Field before the regular season gets underway on Thursday. Now, we are on the over. I know we talked about for the over-under on season wins. I was hoping that my book's number would come down. It opened at 84.5. I was hoping it would come down to 84. This is as high as it has been in the last 10 years. And we've gone over the success the Brewers have had. If you have bet on the over on season wins for the Brewers, the over has hit every year since 2016, with the exception of the pandemic year, which we don't count. We're not counting any year where cardboard cutouts of fans were in the stands. We're not counting any of that. I'm sorry to say. So that's the only year. And they only missed it that year by one game. I think they finished 29-31 that year in the 60-game prorated schedule, and the over-under was 30 or 30.5. So that's it. I mean, they've hit the over 2016, 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. And most of the time, that over-under number has been in the upper 70s, low 80s. Now, 84.5, as much as I feel like they're probably going to be in that 90-win range again this year, 84.5, that's one of those where a couple of big injuries happen and maybe things aren't going so smoothly. We are, of course, on the over. It never came down. So we're on the over on 84.5 wins. I am also on the Brewers to win the division at plus 230. The Cubs, I guess, with Bregman and some of the moves they made in the offseason, just like the last couple of years, they are the favorites to win the NL Central. I do like how everything's kind of lining up. Time is a flat circle. To bring this all the way back to Mulaney, to go all the way back to the beginning of the podcast, I do sort of like how things are lining up where the number feels a little low for the Brewers and the Cubs are picked to win the division, and it's just kind of gone the opposite way the last 2 or 3 years. So I am on the over on 84.5 wins, and we are on the Brewers to win the NL Central at plus 230 heading into the regular season opener on Thursday. Now, I guess at the end of the opener, if you go to the game on Thursday, and it's been many years since I've been to opening day, but if you go to the game on Thursday, there has been a Euchre documentary they've been making for the last 3 years. So we're going back to when Euchre was still with us, and we miss him all the time. God, you miss him on opening day more than almost any day. But they have been working on a Euchre doc for the last 3 years, and it is set to premiere this summer, and they're going to do a trailer for it at the end of the game on Thursday on the Jumbotron. So if you are, and I'm assuming they'll put it on the Brewer Twitter page too. You know, maybe it's one of those things where they only show it to the crowd at the game, but then a day later or later that night they'll put it on their Twitter pages. I would think they would. They'd be foolish not to. But if you go to the game on Thursday, stay after the credits. It's like a Marvel movie. Stay after the credits, and there will be a trailer for the Euchre movie, the Euchre documentary that's coming out at some point this summer. I don't think we have a release date on it yet. But that is coming out this summer, and they're doing a preview for it on the Jumbotron at the end of the home opener opening day on Thursday. But over on 84.5, plus 230 to win the division. They did make a couple of moves. They sent Blake Perkins down. That was kind of a surprise, I think, given how good he's been defensively. But Brandon Lockridge, who came on at the end of last year, he's been really good. Jake Bauers has been unbelievable, living up to the nickname Rake Bauers. He hit .485 with 6 home runs in spring training. Now, a lot like Chad Patrick's 11 ERA, how much do you take from spring training numbers? But Bauers is a guy who can play first base and the outfield. Lockridge is an outfielder, and I think Blake Perkins was just the odd man out there. They also sent down Shane Drowan, who was pretty good in Cactus League action. He was one of the pitchers that came over in the Caleb Durbin deal. And they also sent down Robert Gasser, which I was kind of surprised about. I thought Gasser would start the year in the rotation. He was sort of up and down in spring training. He had a great start on Saturday. 6 shutout innings in his Cactus League final start, and I thought that would be enough to get him in the rotation, but he was sent down the next day. So a couple of moves as they get set for opening day on Thursday. And let's wrap up on some better Badger news, shall we? Let's get a victory call. Badger women's hockey got it done yesterday. National championship game with Ohio State, the 4th straight year. It has come down to Ohio State and the Badgers. It was a 2-0 Badger lead heading into the third period. Then Ohio State scored a couple of goals within 2 minutes of each other in game time to tie it. But then with 6:30 left, it was Claire Enright with the go-ahead goal. Oh, wait, this isn't the goal I want. Hold on. Did I lose the go-ahead goal? Oh, boy. That was the final call. John Butchergross, by the way, was doing play-by-play for the championship game yesterday. I thought he was tremendous. I don't watch a ton of hockey, obviously, but I thought he was really good on that call. Here is the go-ahead goal from Enright.
Shot. Enright can't get it through a maze of skates. Harvey aggressively on the wall to try to keep it in. She does. Makes a nice play down the wall. And here comes Enright to the net. Walks in. Oh, score! She's been great all game.
I like how he timed that out with the horns. You know, you don't want to try to talk through the horn. And then here was the final call from Butchie.
John goes back. It's a great day for hockey. It's a great day for your 9th national championship.
Pretty incredible. So they are back-to-back champions. They are now 3 of the last 4 years, and only one of the loss to Ohio State. As we said, last 4 years they've met in the championship game. And yeah, now 9 national championships in Badger women's hockey history. Like I said off the top, we talked about this coming out of the World Baseball Classic. We saw Team USA win a couple of gold medals, women's hockey and men's hockey at the Olympics. You lost the World Baseball Classic. We're a hockey country now. We are a hockey country now. We're a hockey program now, Badger hockey program. A lot of the women on that team yesterday, they have had quite a 2 months. A lot of those players, I think 4 or 5 of those Badger women's hockey players, they won gold medals for Team USA, and then the month later, they won a national championship, and they capped that yesterday with that 3-2 win against Ohio State. That's a hell of a 4 or 5 week run of winning a gold medal on that stage and then winning a national championship a few weeks later. Goalie Ava McNaughton was the tournament's most outstanding player, had 34 saves in that win over the Buckeyes on Sunday. Anytime we can celebrate a Badger championship, and especially a Badger championship over an Ohio State University, we always celebrate that. Shout out to them. That was a lot of fun to watch yesterday, too. All right, that'll do it for us here on your Monday morning. We'll get back after it Friday. We're going to be in the routine now for a few months. We will go over whatever happens on opening day. Brewers and White Sox at American Family Field on Thursday. Then you get that weird day on Friday where they don't play. A lot of teams have off on Friday as a built-in weather day. Why we would need that with the roof, I have no idea why they can't just play on Friday. But a lot of teams have that built-in Friday day off after opening day just in case the weather's really crappy and they've got to play on Friday instead. So we'll break down whatever happens on opening day on Thursday. We'll be talking a little more March Madness coming out of the first Sweet 16 matchups on Thursday night. And we'll talk maybe a little Bucks basketball as well on Friday. Have a happy, safe work week. We'll chat with you then.